Hello and welcome to another episode of the AI Revolution with John Dio and Cody Willard and Bryce Smith.
Hello, everybody.
Johnny,
Hey guys.
you doing all right? Good Easter? Did you celebrate Easter?
Yeah, let me see. What did we do? We sent a little gift basket to our daughter. So
That's good stuff. We hunted eggs.
what's that?
We hunted eggs.
Yeah, we saw that out the window. There were these little, like, I'm gonna say 2.5-year-olds running around, very determined.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My daughter, I have an 8 and a 10-year-old. My 8-year-old doesn't walk or talk, so she did not hunt eggs. But the 10-year-old is still pretty fervent about her egg hunting experiences. Johnny, it's been a few news items in the AI revolution over the last week or so since you and Bryce met last Monday. Perhaps most importantly of which is the new Willard's Law. Have you heard of the Willard's Law?
Willard's Law. It's got to be related to some kind of
yeah. I tweeted it to you this morning. So you don't need to look it up right now. I'll explain it to you and everybody.
Thanks.
Turns out since 1975, when the first Cray supercomputer was built, to 2024, when the Blackwell NVIDIA computer was released, we have had an 8 billion fold increase in flops that they can achieve. Computing power. I call it flops to be accurate. What's it stand for, Bryce?
Floating point operations per second.
Yeah, yes. You knew that, Johnny.
Yeah.
So 8 billion, would you like to guess what annualized compounding that is over 50 years to go up 8 billion fold?
200?
50.
Not 200, 50.
60.
Yeah, 50.
60% per year improvement over 50 years compounded is 8 billion times. So, what I did is I basically took that as an average over 50 years and created Willard's Law. I'm being tongue in cheek, I hope most of you people know, but if it does catch on, I'll fully embrace my new fame. But the idea is that every year, flop improvement is 60% per year, and it might even accelerate because AI designed chips could put us on a new trajectory path. Did John freeze?
Looks like it.
All right, well, while he's frozen, I'll say this.
Frozen?
You were frozen. You're still frozen. We see you.
I was shocked. That's all.
Oh, yeah, there you go. But John, you and Bryce briefly talked last week about what I call the Kurzweilian acceleration of innovation. And it is how over many, many years, innovation actually accelerates. So for a quick example, it took 6 million years for human beings to make a high rise, but now we're sending starships to space.
It took as much as a high rise.
So, I guess as tall as a high rise.
I guess you could say that if you're into math, like the derivative of the curve or the asymptote or whatever, the straight line along the curve typically looked like a 60% line. Almost anywhere on it, if you're going on that line, it's a 60%. But because the curve it's like a road that curves. Because the curve just keeps curving and curving constantly, you've gone, so yeah, it's why we were talking about how you just can't feel it. You can't
you sit there and you're like, here's another example. We had cars for 100 years, and now in the last 5 years, 10 years, we started putting computers in them with internet connectivity, and now we have a full self-driving 12.3 version of Tesla sitting in the parking lot that drove us from our house to the office today. True story. Right? And so it takes hundreds and hundreds of years for innovation to get to a point where all of a sudden within months you have 4 Chat GPT competitors in the marketplace, but it took 6 million years of human innovation to get to the first Chat GPT.
It's like somebody who's you know, an incredible overnight success after 20 years, you know.
Yeah.
Talk about those.
Yeah. Like myself, you mean? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, no, you've been a success all along. Just people are just realizing it. So.
But no, John, it is sort of mind blowing to step back and look at how, you know, in NVIDIA, I found a report that I wrote 15 years ago when Windows Vista came out. Do you remember that? And it's like 2006, 2007.
Yeah.
And I wrote a report on the biggest winners from the Vista revolution. And number one was NVIDIA, because they sell the best graphics chips. And it's like, you know, and now you fast forward 15 years later, and NVIDIA is driving the entire AI revolution and
Wait, is that the year you picked NVIDIA?
No, I bought it. I did buy NVIDIA back then, but I sold it at some point while I was on Fox. And then I put NVIDIA back into my portfolio in 2016, 8 years ago, at $8 a share.
$8, and now what is it after splits and whatever? It's around
It's $900.
900. So
it's my third 100 bagger. The other two are Apple since 2003 and NVIDIA and Bitcoin since 2013. But it's wild to think. I sure wish I'd kept NVIDIA from 2006. That would be probably
$2 or something.
Yeah, it'd probably be a 500 bagger. Yeah, but it's pretty amazing to step back and just appreciate the acceleration, not just the innovation, but the acceleration of that innovation, and to realize that we really don't have any idea just how amazing the world will be and how much innovation and technology improvement there will be 5 years from now, 10 years from now.
Yeah.
John,
It was on here. I was talking to you guys about is his name maybe Brett Adcock or something? He's the head of Figure Robotics, and we were talking about it before anybody knew who they were, and then they went and did the thing where the partnership with OpenAI and the super cool demo, and now everybody's talking about that guy and how he might be the next Elon Musk, which that's a little pushing it, but
I think he's a fraud. That's what I said 2 weeks ago, if you recall. I think the guy, his whole bullshit eVTOL company was a grift, and he's
definitely had a past where he's like, you know, lost money on things and so forth. I don't know whether I certainly don't want to write off Figure because of him or anything. So
I'm going to have a hard time overcoming my Babcock disgust in order to ever approve a Figure.
Wait, didn't you badmouth Elon Musk to the point where he blocked you? I'm kidding, because that may be true, but it's not. It doesn't really reflect reality. You would just
well, it's and look, I didn't call Elon Musk a fraud.
No.
I mean, certainly there are people who've called Elon Musk a fraud.
Sure.
Still do.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, you know, it always blows my mind that people can look around and be like, yeah, SpaceX is the only entity on the planet that can successfully send rocket ships back and forth to space and have them land. But Elon, he's a fraud. Doesn't know how to engineer.
Talk about getting your head around something like these curves or whatever. Get your head around that Starlink is taller than the Statue of Liberty.
No, Starship. That's what I was saying earlier.
Starship. Yeah.
Yeah, and it took 6 million years of humankind advancement to get to the Eiffel Tower, and now we're sending something that's basically in the same order of magnitude of the height of the Eiffel Tower, and we send that shit to space and then land it.
Yeah.
Oh, crazy. Yeah, we're living in the future. I mean, it really is amazing to step back and think even just about, 40 years ago, you and I were watching Star Trek reruns and being like, wouldn't that be so amazing if someday we had like iPads and computers that could analyze things, and now I'm wearing an Apple Watch and I have a phone and it knows my heart rate.
Yeah. So from the one guy we're talking about here, we've got the largest rocket ships ever. the ability to tunnel underneath cities, something you can implant in your brain. This guy can now like move the mouse. Actually, I think 10 times more mouse clicks per day than a regular person. So it's got some kind of superhumanish aspect to that. Obviously, self-driving cars, electric cars, solar power. We're still on one guy, right? This is all started by one guy. And, then you have all other, there's 3D printing, there's printing of 3D buildings, I'm sorry. He has some of those modular buildings. He's involved with that too. But it just goes on with him and with others. The innovations are just incredible.
Yeah.
John, what do you think? One of the things I'm trying to think about right now in AI is like the role of government, and we've talked about it a little bit, but how serious of an impediment is the government in terms of either regulating? I mean, there's a lot of talk on, Capitol Hill about regulating AI. I don't think that government really ever does a good job of regulating anything, but they could certainly make it more difficult to build AI products. And then Tesla with its full self-driving, having ridden in it today for the first time, I'm thinking through what's gonna be the battle between Tesla and the government to get this to be a mass adopted product, and it's used by everyone. So I don't know.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
First, just like from a personal standpoint, like how it makes me react when I think of what they're going to do. If they stop what's going on with the cars, they're essentially killing people. Yeah. Because you are going to have a much lower accident rate, despite the stories that get highlighted, this or that car crashed in this or that way. We lose 30,000 people a year on the roads. We're close to it. That's like all the people that died in Vietnam. And that's every year. And so to go and get in the way of that, because you're going to say, oh, it's not perfectly safe, or something like this, I think is going to be, it'll be a travesty, and that's killing people.
Bryce and my wife would both tell you that it's much safer for the computer to drive the Tesla than for me to drive the Tesla.
Oh, probably true for, I don't know if you believe that, but probably true for me. I know my wife would do fine without it. She's a great driver.
Yeah.
But
I agree, John. And I just wonder what is going to be that like precipice that we have to clear before that the government, I think it's going to happen. I don't think the government's going to stop it, but I think there's going to be some barriers and litigation or something that has to be cleared by Tesla and others to get to that level.
Let's work on the assumption. I think you guys both agree the Republican Democrat regime doesn't actually ever try to protect people. It is an entity that is continually captured by big business like companies like Tesla, Google, Apple, etc. And most likely, I would picture at some point Tesla, Elon plays the game well. I mean, the guy's got a 25-year track record of using public funds to build his businesses, creating fake economic incentives where like, hey, I built clean cars. Those other guys built dirty cars, so they have to give me $2 billion. The tax credits you get for building clean vehicles and all of the scams that I'm going to call them scams. They're not unquote quite scams, but all of the captured economic rent seeking and taxpayer subsidization of Elon Musk businesses for decades, I would think that Tesla is going to capture the Republican Democrat regime and lobby them and pay off some Republicans and Democrats in order to get full self-driving fully approved.
Well, I think he'll use his influence, but I left out a piece of influence, and I left out a technology before when I was listing off all of his, which the one I accidentally named at the beginning, Starlink, the government, wants their own, the military wants their own Starlink network. They almost like as big as the one that's there, but entirely separate and entirely classified. And then they're talking about having rocket bases around the world that the military has that are basically SpaceX bases. Now, if they're doing those kinds of things, you can't exactly go up to Elon and say, I'm sorry, we can't let you have your cars, do what they want to do. It's like, so I'm thinking he's got some leverage.
Yeah, you're less optimistic about it.
Yeah, my pushback is just that with cars and maybe Optimus robot, there's this what do you call it? Like an externality risk, right? That is probably not as present with Starlink, and that you can kill somebody else, or a robot could kill or hurt somebody else if it's not under control. And people that are in favor of government control would probably like regulations in place to say, okay, this is how you build a robot. This is what it can do. This is what it can't do. The cops have access to control. I don't know. And I just think as we head, the robot stuff, the figure stuff, the Tesla stuff is moving fast. Is the government going to pretty quickly step in and be an impediment here, or is this just going to go exponential and the government's going to play catch up forever?
Well, where's the good old days when Darwin's law could play a part?
Let the robots fight each other. Survival
Or
of the
let the people have the robots, and if they're not careful and they get killed by the robot, well, they probably weren't going to be putting forward.
John, that was a tasteless joke to make there. No, we're not going to Darwinize the people with robots.
We're pro-human, as Elon likes to say.
Yeah, I think we're pro-human over here.
Which kind of human? It sounds like, I mean, I just saw
I want all
humans.
I love them all, man.
Even idiocracy. So this is where we head with the whole population. If just like anybody's allowed to go procreate. So all right, fine. We'll keep all humans.
Yeah, so we'll love on all of them, okay, John?
Yeah, there's a good Onion video where the computers are saying, "Don't worry about the computers taking over. We will end you quickly."
Well, like watching the NVIDIA thing where they're now going to have this LLM platform that anybody can license, and you can go build your own hardware, use the NVIDIA platform. I mean, somebody could start licensing that and have ill intent on what to do with it. And I just think that there's probably people that are scared of that happening, and they're going to want the government to do something about it. So I'm just trying to think ahead.
And look, it's not like we're anarchists. Like, I want the government to protect people. I just, in my lifetime, I'm not sure there's ever been a law or a bill passed in my lifetime that wasn't some sort of subsidization or protection for a giant business.
Like what? I mean, yeah, they're not doing the best job on some aspects of protecting, at the moment, but most of the people I hear talking about that aspect of it, bad people might get a hold of it, is that, yeah, they might. And that in general, there are more good people than bad people. And the good people are going to be doing what they can to be watching for where the bad things happen and so forth. But if you go, what's your alternative? You can have like actual open AGI, for example, or you can have some kind of oligarchic kind of AGI. And how is that better?
It's not. That's where we're headed. That's where we're headed. There will be protections for the companies that get to AGI first, and they will protect the Republican Democrat regime will pass laws to protect those companies from competitors, just like Meta right now is always supposedly in trouble, but every law that gets passed regulating social media companies is basically written by Meta. It's just like in 2008, when the banks were all bankrupt and should have gone to zero and recapitalized to their bondholders, the government went in and protected them and created laws to keep competitors and smaller banks from being able to compete against the big banks. So that's like, why would we think there's going to be anything different but oligarchic regulation of AGI?
That's depressing and probably accurate. But again, what could we do? Are we just going to say,
buy Google, buy Tesla, buy Apple, buy Meta?
No, this is how all you're doing is supporting it then. Like,
hey man, with my pocketbook, I just want to benefit. With my political action, I'll fight it.
It sounds a little short-sighted.
I'll go on YouTube, and I'll go on Fox, and I'll go on anywhere that wants me to come on, and I will talk about the fact that Republicans and Democrats love big business and always get captured by it.
And vice versa.
No, big business. I don't think Republicans and Democrats do what they're told. The Tim Cook's not taking orders from the Republican Democrat regime.
Not Tim Cook, but until recently, Twitter, Facebook, in terms of what they say, and You know, what they're allowed to say, what they stop people from saying, COVID related, for example. You know, again, if they let that play out the way it could have, Darwin could have played a role.
Yeah, the censorship industrial complex is a real thing now.
The reason I even asked the question is because I think, not that from a philosophical point of view, but from an investing point of view, that government is going to get involved at some point, and maybe startup robot companies are going to have they're going to have a harder time competing with the Teslas of the Facebook,
100%.
whoever, right?
Yes.
And so there are.
Okay, I've been wrong every time I've disagreed with you. So here I go again, disagreeing with you. No, I'm going to say one thing is that what I see so far is, yes, the government getting involved, but almost more like just posturing. Like if the thing that the White House came out with in the last week, it was like, you're not going to be allowed to, and the stuff they named was like toothless. So.
Or it's like, I literally do not understand. I feel like I'm in the bizarro world when I listen to crypto bros and crypto girls and whoever, what else you want to call them, crypto people out there explaining to me how Gary Gensler and the SEC is really mean and not allowing the crypto industry to do whatever it's supposed to be doing or something. Meanwhile, Gary Gensler has put a total of one person in jail, Sam Bankman-Fried, who literally stole billions of dollars fraudulently. And Bitcoin has an ETF. Ethereum is still out there. Solana, every other one that's not named Bitcoin or Skittles, my space crypto that I helped invent, every single other one of them, by definition, is a security. And they're not, it's fine. Hex, go ahead. Richard Hart, we might sue him. And Richard Hart's actually a fugitive at this point. But I'm waiting for the government to actually do something about all of the fraud that is, like, the fraud in crypto at this very moment, by the way, it's out of control. If you guys are watching, please only own Bitcoin. Sell every other crypto you've got right now.
What happened to my Skittles coins? I signed up. I was supposed to get some.
You should have gotten them. Not my problem to show you how to do it, but they're...
No, I didn't receive the notification, right? Would have gotten
I don't know, dude. 2 years, we notified everybody and walked them through the process. Bryce has personally handheld dozens of Skittle people who signed up for it to get their free tokens.
All right.
It's still worth it's hundreds of dollars if you could figure out how to get it. But if you actually offline would like our help, we'll help you figure that out.
Yes, I like that. Yeah, somehow I missed the
thousands of people got thousands at the time. They were worth $3,000 to $4,000 each, and lots of them have sold them and bought groceries. Cool by me.
We're now launching a new AI-based cryptocurrency. I'm kidding, everyone.
Yeah, John.
We're not doing that.
Here's what we're going to do. We're going to have AI create the perfect AI-based crypto, and it'll be worth probably $10 trillion tomorrow. So, and it's free, and it's airdrop as long as you sacrifice 10 Ethereum tokens to me.
So, in other AI news, let's
get back to AI.
So, there was the discussion of a Sam Altman and Satya Nadella saying they're going to go put together a computer that may cost as much as, you heard the number?
$100 billion.
$100 billion for a computer.
A data center. Let's call it a data center.
Okay.
Let's get their heads wrapped around it a little bit.
Like, first of all,
size of Utah, we think.
How much electricity would that use?
You know, John, that's actually something that Bryce and I are just starting to dig into a little more seriously. Is are the utilities, the electric utilities, the electric generating utilities, probably about to see an acceleration of demand, a new, not cyclical, but secular growth cycle?
So I would think so. Like when we were talking about, you guys were like, chips are everything. Well, now we've got the NVIDIA chips coming out and they're pretty good advance. How about now electricity is everything? Because that's where these things, they actually need more electricity than there is. And it's not going to be handled by oil or coal or solar. It's like we need, Sam Altman thinks we need fusion. That doesn't even exist and won't for many years. How about fission? You know, it's worked in like France for how long without an accident? It's like they've kind of figured out how to be much safer, but we just don't do it in the U.S. But we need some major new power.
Yeah, 2 points to make on that. Number one, none of the major advancements in technology over the last 150 years would have existed without Ben Franklin / whoever else was creating the basically pinpointing that electricity
Tesla.
existed.
Nikola Tesla.
Even before Tesla, but yeah, Nikola Tesla for sure, advancing the paradigm of electricity. The electricity revolution is maybe the wheel revolution was the first great revolution, but quickly thereafter, again, measured by 6 million years of humankind being on this planet, 5 million maybe, but millions and millions of years of progress and civilizations had to be developed before we had electricity. Even the pyramids were built without electricity, we're pretty sure. So we've had to go through all of this to get to the electricity revolution. But the other point I would make is, unlike chips, electricity is as commodity as a thing can be. It is simply electrons moving, and it doesn't matter whether it's created by nuclear power, coal power, oil, batteries, sun, charging a battery, whatever. It is a commodity. But apparently it is still more demand than supply for that commodity because, Abu Dhabi has $2 trillion sovereign wealth fund built off of electrons, built off of carbon.
Yeah.
And yet your electric bill hasn't gone up much in the last couple decades, right?
I have a daughter who has 2 oxygen machines, and my electricity bill is $800 a month. So
I meant relative to the price per kilowatt hour.
There you go.
Yeah.
The price per kilowatt has been pretty steady for the last 20 years. But will that be true for the next 20 years if all of this, going back to your point, if this $100 billion energy sucking machine gets built for AI, like maybe the cost of electricity finally goes up?
And I guess the bigger point is that electricity, I think, is a relatively expensive form of energy. Like if you ever talk to a farmer who's running a well, you'd always rather have your well on natural gas than electricity because it's probably half the cost or less to run.
But even the natural gas would be converted into electricity to run the well, right?
But I'm telling you, gas is half as expensive as electricity.
Sure,
is.
but it's still moving electrons.
Yeah,
Sure.
Electricity is just the medium. I mean, you don't make electricity, or you don't. Yeah, it's gas or oil or coal or nuclear that generates, or water or heat that generates electricity.
Movement, any movement at all generates.
It's not. You don't grow electricity on
Can't run
trees.
a data center on natural gas. You got to run it on electricity, and so you have to convert it, and it's expensive.
Now, John, correct me if I'm wrong, but if you're able to capture the amount of energy that solar is actually putting on this planet every day, and get it, if we could improve the solar revolution technology tenfold from here, would there be enough solar power from the sun that eventually electricity could even be de minimis cost for most people?
I don't know. There's 2 things I think about when I think about solar. One is we're not using anything of like solar from space yet. And if we did, we're like beaming down what we were capturing. That's like more, longer term, high risk, high reward kind of thing. But then I think about it's like the more you create storage technologies, not just batteries, but like sand batteries or
Sand battery would be a battery, I'm pretty sure.
It's not like it's called a battery, but it's not really a battery. It is a storage of heat, really.
Okay.
And you can heat up a chunk of sand in an enclosed thing and then like it will heat your home for all winter on one charge. Like it lasts 6 months.
Do you not think in 5 years that's going to be a commercial product?
it is a commercial product that it has to, expand around and stuff. And I feel like just, Charlie Brown with Lucy pulling out the football on this stuff. It's this same thing with like longevity research. How long have we been hearing, we're going to live forever? Okay, so show me the first, 150-year-old person, because we still don't have it. The only reason that the average age has gone up until COVID is actually because of decreased infant mortality. It wasn't people like living longer. So we're not getting it there. So like all this stuff where it should be here by now, it's tantalizingly close, but it seems to not quite get here. Now, it makes you wonder about the AI stuff, all the talk about it. Now with it, we're seeing real improvements right in front of us. Things like Sora, where we go, holy crap, look what just happened. But a lot of these things, what's that?
Tell people what Sora is.
Sora is you can, with like a couple of sentences of description, tell the computer, make me a video that shows this, that shows a woman walking down a street at night in Tokyo. The buildings are lit up. There's reflections off of the puddles and the whatever. And like, that's all you say. And then you watch it, and any normal person would say, oh, when did they film that? And the answer is never. And say, well, what actress did they use? And the answer is none. It's like, it's completely invented by the computer. Everything about it is completely.
And John, I guess, right, it took, again, 6 million years to get to the ChatGPT moment, and then it took 13 months for ChatGPT to start creating and rendering outright movies that look like they're real.
Yeah, right. And they're doing it with voice. There's a music app called is it Suno, Suno, something like that you can describe a song, tell it some of the lyrics you want in there, name any genre, and it comes out and it sounds like something you'd hear on the radio. So like, yeah, it's in every modality. It's in
what's amazing,
what you hear.
What's amazing is no matter how hard I try, I can't make anything sound like it came out of the radio.
Well, they can't make it sound like your stuff either. So
well, I think that's a good segue to one of the other things news pieces that was relevant was yesterday. The Journal had an article about the shortage of data now potentially, and a video and photo is going to be, data guzzling AI companies. So how they're running out of the internet is not a big enough place for all of the AI that's being created. They need more video. They need more photos. They need high quality text. A lot of what's on the internet, I think, is just garbage and unusable for training purposes.
Some of which I wrote.
And so it's an interesting topic. Is that a real issue in what you're doing that you've come across as data, like finding good data sources, and then if so, what are you using in your
We've talked about that. And, again, if you say it's true, then I'd be crazy to bet against you, because every week I have to come out with my
Bryce said that later. Bryce said that earlier before we got on the call. He's like, John always has to like mea culpa because I told him something, and then he'll come back the next week like,
yeah. So I'm not saying anything about it. So
I'm not bragging. I'm just
maybe a little.
Maybe a little.
John, though, let's rewind a little bit. Was it 6 months ago or so the New York Times sued ChatGPT for illegally using?
I think less, but yeah.
It's 3 months ago, whatever, recently. And, obviously that we haven't heard anything additional about that lawsuit, but that's out there. And is that a real threat? Or again, is ChatGPT big enough? And the Microsoft, certainly being ChatGPT, OpenAI's partner, Microsoft over the years has certainly captured the Republican Democrat regime. And I don't expect they're actually going to pass any laws, but in a court system itself, if the judge is actually ethical and not captured by the Republican Democrat regime, he might actually rule against ChatGPT and destroy.
What would the ruling be? Stop doing what you're doing? Could you possibly see them stopping?
Cease and desist. Cease and desist. You can't.
All right, I'll stop using New York Times.
Got to pull Chat GPT off of the internet. No consumer, no company can use it until you can prove that you have not stolen a single amount of information from a copyrighted source.
It's not a class action at this point. It's New York Times. So I mean, I bet money that, you know, they're not using New York Times in ChatGPT 5, and that when they come, because they don't need it, and that when they come out, it's like, yep, it's not in this one. So you want to work backwards on old stuff. By the time they litigate it, they'll be like, oh, you're talking about GPT 2 as far as we're concerned, you know, whatever, you can have it.
Like, you know, by the time they litigate it, we're on GPT 9, and they're like, yeah, okay, we won't do that next on this one.
Well, right, or we haven't done it for years. Yeah. So
the direction I think is going to go is what it's highlighting to me is I do think that the IP owners have value in their copyrighted works, and I think the companies that have the IP or the data are sitting on a valuable asset that's relatively more valuable in the age of AI. And like a lot of people have been worried about Netflix, Disney, and those types of things. We've talked about that. I think those companies are going to make money using AI. I don't think they're going to be destroyed.
Yeah, even watching the NVIDIA GTC, not to be confused with GPT. Anyway, the NVIDIA conference from a couple of weeks ago, where he rolled out at the end, Jensen Huang at the end of the keynote rolled out Disney Android bots, and they were trained on NVIDIA chips, technology, whatever you want to call it. And like, we were like, you know, why wouldn't? And it turns out Disney is actively getting ready to start selling, you know, maybe 2 years from now, but they're going to be selling Star Wars droids to consumers for their house. It's in another revenue generator. John, what are we not asking you? In the few minutes we'll finish up with this call today, you know, Bryce and I come in here every day. We're spending 20, 30 hours a week probably researching AI of some sort. It's just, you know, it's such a major part of not just technology right now, but, you know, how we talk a lot about how much Coca-Cola and other non-tech companies are going to be able to save on their supply chains and on their customer service, and how much more efficient their businesses can become as AI and machine learning replace human labor. And what are we not hitting on? I mean, obviously we could talk about the displacement of human labor, but
that's actually that'll be my second one. My first one is that in the way this AI stuff is rolling out, and it looks like it'll be the case probably even with like GPT-5, whatever that is, there's still this need for systems that have data outside of the language model, and that the two pieces kind of work together. So like we work with knowledge graphs, and it's a kind of a database that holds knowledge in a form that you can trust. You know, you point to it and you're like, this is where that number came from. This is the company's own data, et cetera, because you can't trust OpenAI or anybody to be saying, oh yes, you know, Mary Jones bought a widget on Thursday. It's not the kind of thing that it's doing. So to combine across these kinds of data, companies are finding the way to make use of the language model along with their own information systems. And that's just the trend, or what's happening as this stuff gets put together. So that's one thing. The other thing is about the, you know, people losing jobs. And just to say that I had that feeling that I think Hollywood had after they saw Sora, you know, which was when they started coming out with like Devin and Open Devin and whatever. These things are what they call like the first AI software engineer. So you're just talking English to this thing, and you're watching it on multiple screens as it writes code, checks its code, researches things, debugs it, shows it onto a screen, asks you a question, and it's like doing the job of a software engineer. You know, there's all the argument about whether it really is and it replaces anybody. With all of these jobs, here's the thing. People say, oh, that's not going to replace a person because it can only do 80% of what the person does. And that other 20% is really important. Okay, let's say it only does 80%. Now I could take one person and use their needed 20% across 5 jobs, and I just can fire 4 people because I only need
20% times 5 equals 100%. So you could take that 20% of the person's talent and knowledge or whatever it is, skills that you need, and apply it across 4 times.
So every time I see this talk, like, oh, it's not going to take away jobs. It's like, yes, it is. It's okay. It's just going to make people better at their jobs. That's the same thing as taking jobs, because you make this person better enough so you don't need that person. So we just got to be aware that that's what's going on, I think.
And again, as an investor, look, I'm a hedge fund manager, so my brain immediately thinks through what that implies for corporations.
Profitability.
And look, it's profitability, like the profitability, the margins. There's been this thing for I've been, writing and investing in the public eye since 2001. And so for 23 years, I have been arguing with mainly what I call perma bears, but analysts in general are always amazed at how high gross margins, and more to the point, net margins have been for the S&P 500 over the last 20, 30 years. And it looks like there was some sort of hockey stick moment that happened somewhere in the late 80s, early 90s when efficiencies and computer technology, internet, et cetera, started kicking in, and profitability, net margins have not gone down. I would also throw out the fact that Republican Democrat laws protect these corporations and keep competitors from being able to come in and disrupt those margins. But all of that has combined to the fact that margins today are much higher. Net margins today are much higher than they were 20 years ago, and way higher than they were 40 or 60 years ago. Fast forward another 20, 30, 40 years of AI innovations, net margins for Coca-Cola probably are going to be much higher than they used to be. And the companies that are providing the AI itself could possibly have 20, 30, 40% net margins, 50% net margins, gross margins at 95, 98, 99%, like Microsoft used to have in the 90s.
So now with this kind of productivity, I thought I saw a curve that whether it's production or maybe manufacturing have increased in recent couple of years. I don't know whether we're talking COVID effect or beyond that. Is that true? Is that one of the effects that we'll see, along with the what do they call it? Reshoring, for bringing it back onshore. Yeah,
no, that's right. Again, it's like the biggest reason why we don't have why there was a 30-year movement of factories and manufacturing leaving the U.S. and going Mexico, Vietnam, China, anywhere but here, was because the cost of human labor. It was an arbitrage between low-skilled human labor there versus low-skilled human labor here. But if it's robots that are doing the jobs in another 10 years from now, you want it local, because then the shipping costs are much less. The profits are much higher. The cost for a robot of one time and licensing for the software, the costs, sunk costs and recurring costs for the robots that will make your underwear and your chips in 10 years, and your potato chips, not just semiconductor chips, 10 years from now, are going to be 99% less than what you're paying a human being here in the US, or 98% less than what you're paying them in China.
So what does it maybe say about where, certain trends might go, if that at one point when, who was it, MacArthur, built the highways and so forth, it was about getting people to some central place, for a job, or allowing them to move to the suburbs, but they still have to get to where they're going. Then you had the piece you're talking about where labor moves offshore because of the cost of it. And with it, you have all of the logistics and all the supply expenses and supply chains going all the way across the world. And even, the U.S. Navy supporting kind of the existence of a, quote, peaceful kind of, world for that kind of stuff to happen or something. And now it's like, what is that like? And then like smaller cities and towns like becoming like non-existent or dying because people where manufacturing used to happen, it wasn't happening anymore. Might we see some kind of a renaissance And then like, who says where it has to be? If, you know, the robots can be in particular places to make things happen, like maybe I can live wherever.
Yeah. And maybe the biggest factor in deciding where to build your factory in the year 2035 is where the products are going to be shipped eventually. And so if you're, you know, if you're making chips that are being used in San Francisco, you've got a small factory outside of San Jose or something.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah. So then, you know, we talked about like the things that we don't have enough of: electricity and data, you know, and electricity, what might happen to make that happen. And then data to train things is where I think about, you know, is there a new economy with these people losing their jobs? You know, is there a new economy for people to be training AIs, maybe on the robotics side of things? You know, the AI is watching the human to like, hey, Bryce, we're talking about plumbing. It ain't that easy. You know, it takes a long time to know the ins and outs of it. And if you got the ability to have this robot apprentice, you're teaching it as much as it's, you know, as much as it's being useful with whatever it automates or goes and does for you. You know, you're showing it the tricky bits and it's learning, and people in general getting to, you know, to work like that. Like maybe there are jobs there.
you know, if I ever start thinking I'm smart, I try to understand plumbing. Then I quickly decide, man, for hundreds, maybe thousands of years, the Egyptians even had plumbing, right? Somehow I can't figure out plumbing. I talk about AI till I'm blue in the face. Got lots of theories on acceleration of innovation. Can't explain plumbing.
You know, they describe chips and voltage and stuff in terms of water and flowing water. I'm like, why are you using that analogy? I never worked it out with the water.
I know. Yeah. Like when someone tries to explain electricity to me and they're like, yeah, no, man, like the volts are this from plumbing and watts are this. And I'm like, let's go back and study the plumbing. What's the pressure versus, like, it still is pretty amazing that you can have a hot water heater and you turn on your sink in the other side of the house upstairs and hot water comes to it. I don't know. Anyway, I feel dumb now. That's a good way to end the segment.
All right, guys.
Peace and love, John. Thanks for being here. We'll see you next week. Same time, same AI channel.
Good to see you guys.
Thanks,
Take
John.
care.
Happy April Fool's Day. Can I just mention, everybody, I have been loading up on Hex and Bonk, the best two cryptos in the world.
April Fools.
April Fools. Thank you. Goodbye, everybody.